Yeah, we got across the line.
Well, good morning. This meeting is now called to order. Ms. Barrow will introduce our visitors.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Good
I
luck.
have Lena Sweeten-Schultz from the Times-Record-News, Barry Maka and Lee Kidwell. David Sanchez will be introduced more appropriately in a moment. We have Vice President Marilyn Foley and Controller Chris Stovall, Faculty Senate Chair David Carlston, Associate Vice President Kristen Garrison for Academic Affairs, Undergraduate Education and Assessment.
Wow.
I know, it just goes on. Interim Provost James Johnston, Vice President Keith Lamb, Associate Vice President Matthew Park, Interim Director of Athletics Kyle Williams, Vice President Tony Vidmar, and Cindy Ashlock, Executive Assistant President.
Well done, well done. Well, Dr. Foley will make a special introduction.
I'd like to introduce David Sanchez. He started Monday. He's our new Chief Information. Up here? You gotta go over
Up
here.
here.
Yes, go up there.
Oh,
Directional. Here. So he started Monday. He's our new Chief Information Officer. We did a national search for this position and had a broad-based campus committee that did the search, and he was selected as our top candidate. He is from the University of New Mexico. He got his undergraduate degree in instructional technology and a doctorate in educational leadership. He was at the University of Mexico for 26 years. So has a lot of experience in different positions at the University of New Mexico. His wife and his youngest son is still there. Karen is still there with their youngest son, Joshua, who's finishing high school, and his older son, Jacob's at Texas Tech, and his younger son is Clinic.
Oh.
Oh,
gosh, there we go.
So anyway, with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome David and let him make a few statements
you.
and add if you have questions for him.
Yeah. Well, my younger son, he's committed to Tech, but it's still open, so we'll again, I'm from the University of Mexico. I was out there for about 26 years. I worked in a lot of different positions within technology under the provost office for a number of years with a department called Extended University, where we did all the classroom and lab support, all the distance education pieces. We controlled ITV courses and online courses. Blackboard learning was a product that we used. And I worked for a number of years also under the enterprise IT shop, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of different pieces of campus. I'm familiar with the different perspectives different people bring when we're talking about technology on campus. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to this new adventure here in Wichita Falls, getting to know the campus, getting to know the city a little bit, and getting to know the staff. And, this is week one, and so far it's been a really great week. The staff and the faculty that I've been able to meet have just been very welcoming, and I'm very appreciative for that. I don't know if there's any sort of questions.
Don't you have family in this area too?
Yeah. So my wife's side of the family, we have family in Fort Worth, in Lubbock, down in Temple. So a big part of me looking for a position out here was that. We don't have a lot of family out in New Mexico. And so, all the holidays, we're always coming out here, our folks were coming out there. So with our sons being out, or coming out here, my younger son and my older son being out here in Lubbock, it just, it's going to be a better geographical place for us and our family. And so my wife is absolutely thrilled about coming. She came out here in December. She's thrilled about coming to Texas. She's from Texas, and thrilled about being close to our family. And when I was out here in December for interview, she's like, "I hope you get this job. I hope you get this job."
No pressure.
And so it's a little difficult. She'll be out there until May or June, until my younger son graduates. I didn't want to pull him out. The school year is almost over. He's a senior, so he's going to finish up. And they'll be coming out here. So I got a few months out here by myself, which is interesting.
Well, welcome, Dr. Sanchez. We're really excited to have you here. I think you're going to be filling a much needed space for us. So, welcome. last name I've ever heard.
And both at Tech. What's up with that?
Like you a lot.
Already.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for participation in our committee meetings yesterday. As a reminder, don't be like me, turn your cell phones off, because we are being streamed live on the internet. We provided an opportunity for public comment concerning agenda items at the beginning of each meeting, and it appears no one has signed up to speak, so we will move on. Item 17-68 is approval of the minutes of the November 10th and 11th meetings of the board. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. We now move on to the consent agenda. The executive committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Items presented for committee approval only, 17-44 are the committee minutes. Items presented for information only were 17-45, the campus construction update, 17-46, Dallas-Fort Worth expansion update. Item approved by committee and placed on consent agenda. 17-47 is Wichita Falls Museum ratification of Ascension Artworks, ratified the ascensioning of items as presented. I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Gibbons, please present the Academic and Student Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met yesterday. The following items are presented for committee approval only. 17-48 are the committee minutes. Items presented for information only are 17-49, the faculty report, 17-50, the staff report, 17-51, student government report, 17-52, athletics report, and 17-53, enrollment report for the spring of 2017. And please note that a new report was issued to this morning showing the online added to the enrollment in your packet. The following items were approved by the committee and today are placed on the consent agenda. 17-54 was an academic program degree name change. The committee approved changing the name of Master of Education with a major in Reading Education to the Master of Education with a major in Language and Literacy Studies as presented. 17-55, the addition of academic program concentration. Approved the addition of a concentration in sports administration to the Master of Education degree with a major in educational leadership as was presented. Item 17-56 is the naming of the science lab. Approved naming the instrumentation lab in Boland Science Hall, room 301, for Dr. Betty Stewart, former provost and dean of the College of Science and Mathematics. Chairman Sanchez, I recommend approval of these consent agenda items as presented.
Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Gregg, please present the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met yesterday. Our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only was approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Items presented for information only. 17-58, summary of financial support through December 31st, 16. 17-59, facilities maintenance and debt levels presentation. 17-60, fiscal year 18 budget planning. Items that were approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. 17-61, financial reports to accept the fiscal year 2016 annual financial report and the September through December 2016 financial reports. 17-62, to accept the first quarter 2017 investment report. The 17-63 personnel reports and changes in the fiscal year 17 budget were ratified the changes as presented. Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of these consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Ms. Burks, please present the Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee met on yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 17-64, committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 17-64, compliance activities update, 17-66, audit activities update. Items tabled with no action taken. Item 17-67D, new policy 4.197, information security policy. Item 17-67, items approved by committee and placed on consent agenda are as follows. 17-67, MSU policies and procedures manual changes. Approved a new policy and changes to policies noted below. Number A, or letter A, policy 2.31, administration selection process. B, policy 2.323, president's office organization. And C, new policy 4.117, suspected dishonest or fraudulent activities. Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of these items on the consent agenda as presented.
Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're now going to return to the discussion of item 17-67D. It's the information security policy. A new draft of the policy has been prepared for our consideration. Ms. Stokes, do you have any comments?
Yes, on yesterday, we all discussed, and Kevin brought up a really good point concerning the policies and the fact that the policies had not yet been included, so it might be a little early for us to be including them without that information. So Lee went back yesterday after our conversation, and she put together this new policy and procedures changes. And if you've had an opportunity to review it, basically what she's asking the board is to give Dr. Shipley the ability to give that responsibility to our Chief Information Officer so that he can then put forward policies for the board to review at a later date.
Anybody have questions about the policy for either Tiffany or Lee?
Well, I think our issue was that we're being asked to make a motion to adopt a policy that hasn't been formulated yet, and my objection was that the motion needed to say if we agreed to moving forward with the process of formulating a policy. I'm not saying where we change the motion. We may have one, but that was my concern, not the policy itself.
Okay. So I think that right now, all that we're doing and all that we're asking, what Lee is asking the board to do is to just adopt the policy which gives the president the ability under the Texas Education Code to assign someone the responsibility of putting the policy together. I think that's all this is asking at this point.
So adopt a policy for her to do a policy.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could say it like
Authority.
that.
We're
sure.
basically like delegating that piece of authority for her to be able to create that.
Okay.
Which I think is what the law says anyway.
Right.
Correct. If you want, Lee can provide you with a copy she gave me. Where basically what she did is reference each provision of this policy will reference a specific provision of the code that required or that creates this obligation. So it's a nice kind of dovetail. Any other comments or questions?
What is the wording of what we're approving? Could you read that again?
You're approving the policy. You're approving this
So the
policy. That's
motion
what the
is-
motion is, to approve policy 4.197.
As presented.
As
As
presented.
presented.
I have not had time to look at it and understand the policy and whether it's comprehensive or not. I thought we were going to approve an assignment of the ability of the president to put together a policy that we would later approve.
That's what this is.
I cannot feel
that's what
feel
the motion-
comfortable agreeing to this policy without having seen it.
That's okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So if that's the case, do we table it? I mean, can
We just wouldn't take action, and it would come back in, there'd be no need for a motion, and we would just, unless you felt the need, and we would just come back in May with a modified policy that,
Well, can I make a stab at making a motion that I think will fix it?
Sure. I'm open.
Okay, I move that we authorize the president and Director of Internal Audits to formulate our information security policy.
Which is the essentially what he says, so that's, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
That's fine.
But let me make sure, but you still want the policy to come back in May. So you're not approving any written policy today.
Correct.
Just authorizing them to prepare it
Right.
and make whatever steps you need to.
I think we've talked about this. This is so critical to what we do. It is so essential and so important that we get it right. That I'm not wanting to push this forward for anything other than the fact to be thorough. And I think I'd like for the security information officer to review it, to make sure we have the right policy before I would have the ability to even look at what someone else provides. Does that make sense? So I really would like that assurance from the CIO and the president. This is the policy we ought to adopt.
Does this place us in any jeopardy by not having something currently in place right now?
If we do Jeff's motion, it basically authorizes Suzanne to act, and that's really what this is anyways. So I don't think that it puts us necessarily, and we can step in Jeff, you think that's different.
No, I think it's the same thing, it's just written, so I don't see an issue with
Yeah.
I actually don't see an issue with either one, but I'm fine with Jeff's idea.
So I would defer to the chair of the committee and the chair of the board, but I guess my view would be is I completely agree with everything that's being said. The only thing I think we're missing here is a commitment from the administration to come back to us with information regarding the policy as it's developed. As Dr. Gibbons has properly pointed out, this is highly critical to what we do. We were criticized for not having it. And so because of that, I think it's incumbent upon this board to be able to see it again when it's done. Because as I read this, I didn't see anything in here that said we got to come back to the board with it. And so I really think that's important. I'm not suggesting to you that we approve anything at that time, but what I'm suggesting is we get a chance to take a look at it because it is very, very important to what we do.
May I amend my motion to include that?
Can I read it to you what I think I've heard? you say?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think, yeah.
Authorize the President and Director of Internal Audit to formulate the university's information security policy and bring it back to the board in May for consideration.
Okay, one thing, is that appropriate to include Lee, or should it be just the president, or should it be a president and the CISO?
If you just say the president, then
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
because I'm sure it would involve.
yeah, okay.
I don't think we need to formalize it, but when they come back, I don't know what financial implications some of this might have. It could be quite expensive, and I'd like to have that matching, but it doesn't need to be part of it.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay, so I can then have now.
Now
Ask
we
for the
just
motion.
need a second for
Okay,
Jeff's
so we have
motion.
Jeff's motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 17-69, the President's Report and Discussion of Higher Education Issues. Dr. Schiff.
I thought it would be interesting for you to hear from me how the legislative session is going. And it started off with a revenue estimate from the controller that showed that it was going to be a budget tightening session, and it was followed by a Senate-based bill that zeroed out over $1 billion in funding for higher education institutions. We've seen them now identify about $300 million to go back toward funding special items, but the special item funding was basically zeroed out. We receive a very small, the smallest portion of special item funding, but we do receive $2.3 million each year in institutional enhancement. And every university was asked to identify their top priority to return to us from the special item funding. So we identified that, with a very close second being the Flower Mound expansion. And I want to give special credit to Senator Estes, who has worked with us very closely to make sure his colleagues understand the impact of our Flower Mound expansion. He was instrumental, and Mr. Ayers was instrumental in hosting a reception for the head of the Higher Education Committee, Senator Seliger. And Senator Seliger spent half a day with me touring the campus and understanding our expansion to Flower Mound. The other aspect that we've had with the Flower Mound expansion is that we have, as Keith mentioned yesterday, more legislators aware of us. And one of the most important ones is Senator Jane Nelson, who's the head of finance. We've met with her staff several times. So Debbie and I have been to Austin. We've talked to legislators. They're all aware of this move. And we believe that if special item funding is increased in any way, we will be at the table. So it could be that nobody gets new special item funding, but we believe if special item funding, any new is added, that will be seriously considered. So we're not giving up hope. When we went to the House side, it was a little more cheerful. Their budget did not cut higher education as much as the Senate, but their revenue estimate will likely need to be reduced. We'll probably be testifying before House Appropriations in the next couple of weeks. They just named their committees yesterday. And the week before that, the governor issued a hiring freeze. It's going to be a very interesting ride this year. We were a little worried about the hiring freeze because we didn't know exactly what the details of it were. And so when Debbie met with the governor's staff, it was clear that this affects state agencies, including higher ed, but it's primarily state funds. So it won't affect any hiring done on non-state funds. So all the funds we have that come from tuition and revenue, those are exempt. And so all the faculty hiring we're doing, that's also exempt because they're not going to be hired until September 1. So this was an effort by the governor to get funding in this year's budget, freeze it, reallocate it, and we're participating in every way we need to. We'll continue to monitor legislation that affects higher education, and we'll let you know if anything new comes up, and I'll be happy to take any other questions. It's going to be interesting getting to know this legislature.
Any feel for what happens after September 1 with the budget? Did they hint he would continue this, the governor?
We're hearing that this is all about Child Protective Services and recovering enough money in this year's budget for Child Protective Services, and that as they build the budget for the next 2 years, they will take into account the monies needed for that and other things, so that we don't expect to hit September with any sort of reversion or revertment, because they will have factored it into the budget. We hope.
Other questions for Dr. Shipley in relation to that?
That concludes my report.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Shipley, for that. That concludes our business today. So thank you again for your participation. We are adjourned.
Boy, wow. World